talk about The Exorcist. It was a film first made in 1973, directed by William Friedkin, who got the film was nominated for an Oscar. It's a horror film, but an all-time classic. But since then, about 4 sequels have been made, and there's a new one in the pipeline starring the actress, extremely successful actress Scarlett Johansson. And people are saying, why has she done this? Because she's very suspicious, old Charlotte, apparently. She never walks under a ladder, crosses her fingers whenever she passes a graveyard. Recently, while she was staying at a centuries-old hotel in the UK, she abruptly left her room in the middle of the night and refused to go back, citing a series of strange occurrences. So you might think she's not set up for this kind of role, but she's going to do it anyway. This one's going to be called, they think, the working title is The Exorcist, The Martyrs. Now, the thing about the film is, ever since 1973, people surrounding it, people at the centre of it working on it, some of the cast, some of the people working on it, the backroom boys and girls, terrible things have happened to them. Now, one thing, as I was just mentioning, in 1972, when they were sort of converting a Manhattan warehouse into a handsome Georgetown terraced home where the possession was supposed to happen, it caught fire. And when they came in the next day, everything was a mess, apart from the actual room in which they were filming the possession of the character 12-year-old Regan McNeil, who's played by Linda Blair. Linda Blair has since suffered terrible back problems. Several of the people concerned of the cast of the original film died soon afterwards. And just generally, there is this long list of disturbing incidents that have led to the myth, if you like, or the legend of the curse of the Exorcist. Now, you know, I'm a man of the world. I'd be likely to reject all that sort of claptrap, that hocus pocus. However, you know, I do think there may be something in tapping into the forces of evil. What do you unleash there? And have the various directors and producers and stars in Hollywood been dicing with danger, dicing with supernatural danger, when they've been chronicling this story, this absolutely terrifying story of diabolical possession? Let's, of course, talk to priest and exorcist, Dean Jason Bray. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hi, good to see you. Hi.
Thanks for joining us. Now, my take on this, you know, I'm not much of a kind of believer or anything like that, but you know, and I know the way that these kind of myths or these legends can sort of arise and prosper. People gossip, Chinese whispers and all that. But I do think, you tell me what you think, you're the expert, but I do think there's probably something in suggesting that if you tap into the forces of evil, this film is about the darkest forces of evil. Perhaps you're unlocking something that you don't quite understand, that perhaps bad things do happen if you tell these kind of stories. What do you think?
Not at all convinced, actually. So the Exorcist franchise, you know, and certainly the original film was basically written by well, very devout Roman Catholic, and it's basically a sort of almost like an advert for the Roman Catholic Church. So so in a sense, what you might say, I'm not a Roman Catholic myself, I'm an Anglican, but what you might say is that actually it's quite a positive story. So you know, I don't buy any of the you know, the sort of evil stuff really, and to be honest, I'd see it as a coincidence.
Well, I would say you haven't seen The Exorcist, right? You haven't seen the original film.
No, I haven't seen The Exorcist. I haven't seen any of the films. Not great on horror films, to be honest.
Yeah, you should see the original. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
people keep telling me this, and you know, I was on Irish radio a while ago, and you know, they played some music, and everyone started laughing, and I thought, what are you laughing about? Apparently, it was the music.
But the original film, I haven't seen any of the sequels. I'm like yourself. I'm not. I get pretty freaked out by horror films, particularly this kind of film. If you watch this film, I think you would agree. The effect it has on you is almost visceral. There is something. It's a unique film. It's astonishing. It is powerful. Some film experts say it may be the greatest film ever made because the effect is so visceral, so extraordinary. So there is something unique about the original Exorcist film, and the scenes starring Linda Blair as the 12-year-old victim of this possession are deeply disturbing. I'm just saying, and you're quite right. If you take 5-6 films and you say, oh look, I've got 20 people who worked on those films to whom bad things happened, it's not entirely out of the realms of possibility. But no, I mean, but what do you feel about? I mean, is there a force of darkness that you can tap into?
Yeah, but you know, for me, the force of darkness tend to be concentrated in human beings. So if you look over history, you've got the 20th century. You've got mass murderers. You've got Stalin. You've got Mao. You've got Pol Pot. All those people. They were inspired not by demonic forces. They were just inspired by being nuts. Almost by a sort of ideology. And I reckon that the evil actually much more frightened of human beings than I am of the paranormal or anything like that.
The director, William Friedkin, who also got an Oscar for The French Connection, a hell of a director, much underrated. This, I think, was his follow-up film. He was nominated for an Oscar for this, but didn't actually win the award. He talked about this fire that happened on the set. The headline was "Exorcist Set Burns, Mystery Fire Spares Demon's Room." And he at first said, Friedkin said, this is just the publicity I needed. But later on did admit that it kind of freaked him out, and the quote was, "rattled me more than I let on." Then there were several of the cast who died soon after post-production. And bad things have happened to a lot of people connected to this film. And I take your point, it's probably mostly coincidental. But tell me more about, I mean, you do exorcists. I mean, are people actually possessed by evil, or is it some kind of psychological sort of occurrence?
Yeah, to be honest, most of the people that we come across who claim that they're possessed are, got some sort of psychiatric problem. Very often they're hearing voices that are sort of saying, telling them to do things or telling them that they are in fact possessed. And hearing voices isn't usually regarded as a symptom of sort of being possessed. It's usually a symptom of schizophrenia or some sort of psychiatric disorder of some description. So we're really skeptical of anybody who comes and says, I'm possessed, as much as anything else, because if you're actually possessed, the last thing you're going to do is contact somebody like me to try to get rid of it. So if your entire body and entity and will has been taken over by the forces of evil, the last thing you're going to want to do is to come to me and say, actually, I'm possessed, to get this out of me. We come across lots of people who, think that they probably are possessed, but I've never actually come across anybody that I've even been suspicious that they might be possessed.
But do you believe in evil as a sort of ethereal entity?
I'm not sure.
I'm going to ask you if you believe in God in a minute.
No, I do believe in God. Do I believe in do I believe in the devil? Do I believe in a sort of I'm not sure. I'm open to the possibility that there may be. So I'm also open to the possibility that people might actually sometimes be possessed. I've just never met one. I've met people that I know to be evil. So, you know, I was sat in a room with people and I thought, actually, there is something about you that makes my flesh crawl. And then I've discovered afterwards that there is actually a very good reason why this person might have, you know, might have been somebody who's, you know, completely evil, given themselves over, if you like. But I'm not sure that there is a sort of demonic force there. That's something that, well, you know, in
sort
a
of
sense,
exists on its own. That possesses people. You feel that people themselves create whatever evil.
Yeah, I think people probably give themselves over just to that sort of, and it's a sort of path that you go down. You know, this is a sort of small thing to do, and then a bigger thing to do, and then a bigger thing to do, and you end up being consumed by it, effectively.
And don't you sort of de-spirit houses? You go around sort of...
I do, yeah.
Well, do you believe in ghosts, then?
I suppose I probably do, yeah.
So do you get calls from people who say, I've got a haunted house that's really freaking us out? What do you do to get rid of the spirits in these homes?
Well, ultimately, we pray. You know, I'm a Christian priest. What I tend to do is I sort of listen really carefully to what's going on and try to work out what it is that's, you know, because sometimes people spook themselves out. Scarlet Jan, maybe one of those actually. But yeah, we pray, we bless holy water, we splash holy water around, and we say prayers, we say the Lord's Prayer in particular, and that seems to work most of the time.
So okay, so that's good. So that de-spirits a house. But is it automatic? You know, you talk about saying prayers, holy water and all that, which tends to indicate that automatically all ghosts are somehow malevolent. Is that automatic, or are some ghosts really good guys and good women?
I've come across, ghosts seem to be sort of fairly neutral, I suppose. You know, the living can harm you. I'm not sure the dead can. Okay. You know, and some of the time I talk to people who've experienced somebody that they've loved in life, and somehow they're stuck and they keep seeing them, and other people keep seeing them. So there's a friend of mine who's his ex-boyfriend used to appear in the you know, in the back bedroom and occasionally in the shower, and would freak would freak people out, but not a malevolent spirit in any way, you know, just sort of somebody that had been loved and somehow got left over.
Extraordinary. Listen, Jason, fantastic to talk to you. Would you agree to a proposal by me? This is my proposal.
I might do.
Would you consider watching the original Exorcist film and then come back on and give me a review?
Yeah, I might.
Well, I'm going to pressurise you because honestly, I know exactly what you mean about these kind of films. That usually they irrationally scare me, and B, sort of kind of bore me. You know, they're just all a bit silly. But the original Exorcist is, I can tell you, it is a film classic. It is a remarkable piece of filmmaking by a director of true genius, which William Friedkin was. Have a look at it, will you, and come back on, and can we talk about it? Because I would find your reaction fascinating. Deal?
Yeah, okay.
Deal?
Not sure.
All right, well, we'll pressurise you. In the new year, come on, watch it. Don't watch it on Christmas Day. It spoil the whole atmosphere, but later on we'll do that. Let's talk about Bondi Beach. Before we talk, shall we listen to a Jewish eyewitness to this atrocity that unfolded on Sunday evening on the beach at Bondi, as Jewish people celebrated Hanukkah. Let's have a listen.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yes, there was two shooters, one on the bridge, one under the bridge. Just start to shoot for 20 minutes. They shoot, change magazine and just shoot. Simple as that. 20 minutes was 4 policemen there. Nobody gave fire back. Nothing. Like they froze. Like for. It looked like 20 minutes, and they shoot. The guy changed magazine. I look at him all the time. I was doing my babies under me, and I look at that, and it's just rifle and a pistol, and just shoot. And the other one was under. They start to come close to the audience. I think one of the.
Okay, now one of the stories, or I'm reading through the victims today, so many of the victims, or a significant number, children of course, women, but also husbands and fathers who threw themselves across their wives to try to protect them and then were shot to death in so doing. This was an attack on Jewish people celebrating Hanukkah, which is the festival of light for them. How a single container of oil kept light going for 12 days, unlikely but true, and all that. So it's a very it's a celebration of the beauty of light over darkness, and this happened. Now, Anthony Albanese, their Labour Prime Minister, while he has presided over the rise of anti-Semitism in Australia, they have pro-Palestine marches. Not so long ago there was one outside the Sydney Opera House where the crowd were chanting "Gas the Jews, gas the Jews," and just as they do in this country, the cops just stand and watch and tolerate this, don't do anything about it. So he has been, while this has been going on, he's been talking about the worrying rise of the far right. The far right have been responsible for no terrorism whatsoever in Australia. Even after yesterday's horror, he's still talking about the far right. Can I just remind him and anybody else who has forgotten that this was an attack by two Muslim maniacs, a father and son, on Jewish people. Another thing that disarmed me, Isabel, was this. So many reports, newspapers, television, radio, right up until almost now, talking about an attack on Bondi Beach, killing 15. Some of the victims were Jewish. It wasn't an attack on Bondi Beach. It was an attack on Jewish people by Muslims. It's as simple as that. Still, people seem to be terrified to categorise it for what it is. Before I get your response, this is Anthony Albanese talking about the far right being the problem.
Just briefly, to be clear, your priority from National Cabinet in relation to the gun laws, what is the #1 priority for you?
I would put them all together, making sure that they operate effectively and that they're kept up to date and that they're updated for the changing threat. We live in a more dangerous world in 2025. The threat of anti-Semitism, as we have seen, is very real. Threats of other occurrences, such as the rise in the far right, which has also been identified, of course, by Mike Burgess, is also a threat.
So there you go, Isabel. He's obsessed with the far right. He's been talking about the far right for, throughout this rise of anti-Semitism. And I'm told by my Australian friends that their problem with anti-Semitism is similar to that in Britain, only worse. And Albanese has presided over a system which tolerates these pro-Palestine marches. I have no problem with pro-Palestine marches. I do have a problem with them when they start chanting things like "Gas the Jews," as they did outside Sydney Opera House. Albanese, his government, his police force did nothing about that sort of thing. There are other examples. Today he's talking about, oh, we must embrace our Jewish community, oh, this awful anti-Semitism, we must protect them. He's done nothing to protect them. On September the 21st, along with Keir Starmer, he recognised Palestine for no particular reason except to polish his halo and signal his virtue as a left-wing politician. And 12 days after that, we had the Manchester synagogue attack. Now Australia has got this attack, and the message there is, if you reward terrorism like the October the 7th atrocity, then you will cause more terrorism, right?
I mean, it's also depressingly familiar, isn't it? Something absolutely horrific and outrageous happens, and the truths about the type of people that committed that awful abomination is uncomfortable, and so a political leader, a prime minister or a president, starts talking about the far right as if that's got anything to do with it whatsoever. I'm sure that most of our listeners will be remembering Keir Starmer's response at this time to the Southport murders. Nothing to do with the far right, but this is the reflex of left-wing leaders. And their second reflex is to start talking about kind of patch and mend solutions, like, well, we need to change the gun laws a bit, or we need to stop knives being sold on Amazon, when in fact the much bigger issue is the ideology that is behind these attacks. You know, I personally think it's a great idea to have as few guns as possible in a country. There's a reason that mercifully the UK doesn't have mass shooting events as they have in America. Virtually every day there is something like that in the US. But it doesn't tackle the root cause of these horrendous terror attacks on the Jewish community, which is the anti-Semitic ideology that is allowed to flourish. And, you know, Australia can crack down on guns as much as it likes. There'll still be other weapons with which to carry out these sorts of absolutely reprehensible murders.
Yeah, and that's exactly the comparison I made, that after the Southport killings, that awful slaughter in the dance hall there, Keir Starmer first of all started blaming the far right when it had nothing to do with the far right, and secondly him and Calamity Cooper, the then Home Secretary, announced that their way of tackling this horror and trying to prevent it ever happening again was to slap a ban on Amazon selling knives. You know, which is like putting a bar of chocolate in front of a fire and expecting it not to melt. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And Anthony Albanese saying, I'm going to crack down on gun control. Well, look, Australia, by common consent, has the tightest, the strictest gun control laws in the Western world. Well, ours are pretty strict, but much stricter than ours. So he's got the strictest gun controls known to the Western world. And his response to what happened yesterday in Bondi Beach is say, let's have even stricter gun control laws. The father was a fully licensed firearm holder. He was fully licensed and a totally legal possessor of firearms. So Albanese's response is just as pathetic as trying to stop Amazon selling knives after Southport. These people, it's just they want something to say sound as if they're doing something about it. What he should have done something about a long time ago was stop the inexorable rise of anti-Semitism in his country.
Yes, and you know, if it's impossible to get your hands on guns, if you are filled with this hatred, if you believe that some twisted version of the Quran compels you to slay infidels, then you'll find other weapons. It could be crossbows, it could be knives. You know, there are always, I'm afraid, other horrible ways of taking innocent lives. And so really the question that ought to be being asked by Albanese is, how have we allowed this to prosper, to flourish, to mushroom in our society? And it's happening in the UK as well, and in so many other countries, this warped, this sick version of Islam that we are far, far too tolerant about in the UK, when so many other countries, so many Middle Eastern countries say we're not having any of that here, and yet we allow it in our own country. And, you know, I think so much of what's going on goes unknown. You know, I think there's terrible things probably being said in the darkest recesses of bad mosques in the UK that we don't know anything about because it's not in our language. You know, the vast majority of Muslims in the UK are peaceful and part of valuable parts of our society and want nothing to do with any of this. But, you know, the amount of extreme stuff on social media that's in Arabic and that passes through the filters, because the filters are set up to deal with the English language, not to deal with Arabic, is truly worrying. So we are missing a lot because of that language barrier.
Yeah, 15 dead, I believe 29 seriously injured. This is a guy called Arsen Orsovsky. He is a Israeli Jewish lawyer who gave interviews yesterday very strikingly with his face covered in blood. Let's listen to his reaction to the attack.
I survived October 7th. I lived in Israel the last 13 years. We came here only 2 weeks ago to work with the Jewish community, to fight anti-Semitism, to fight this bloodthirsty, ravaging hatred.
That's why you're here?
That's why I'm here. You know, we've lived through worse. We're going to get through this, and we're going to get the bastards that did this.
Tell me, did you see the gunman?
I did. I saw at least one gunman firing. Looked like a shotgun firing randomly in all directions. I saw children falling to the floor. So elderly. I saw invalids. I saw people just. It was an absolute bloodbath, blood gushing everywhere. You know, October 7th. That's the last time I saw this.
As an aside, Isabel, I put that. I thought it was very striking what he said, and so I put that picture onto Twitter, or X as it's now called, just saying, you know, this guy's face is the story of this. Yeah, this is what happens when you reward terrorism. Anyway, Twitter, a warning went up saying, "Oh, watch out for graphic content," you know, because he had blood on his face. Okay, I say fair enough. I put it up on Facebook as well. And it was banned from sharing. No one was allowed to share it because they you know,
weird,
because
isn't
that
it?
yeah, well, they sort of, I think the reason was of graphic content, shocking blood. You know, we should be allowed to share things like this rather than just doing a knee jerk. Oh, there's blood on his face, don't share it. They should look at the content. People should know about this stuff. They really should. I just mentioned that in passing. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk about another aspect of it. This hero, this extraordinary Syrian-born hero, Muslim guy, ran a fruit shop, who his act of bravery is astonishing. People know what it is now. We broke this story last night that Donald Trump will follow through on his pledge to sue Britain's state broadcaster, the BBC, for an enormous amount of money after it admitted that its flagship news documentary show, Panorama, deliberately doctored footage and tape of the president making that speech back on January the 6th, 2021, to make it look as if he was calling on the crowd, on the mob, to march violently on Capitol Hill, calling on them to cause insurrection, calling on them to spark a revolution in America. He was doing nothing of the kind. The BBC naively, ridiculously, immediately admitted this. Yes, we did this. You know, we're not proud. We apologise. We're apologising to the president. We hope that this is the end of the affair. We're very, very sorry that we told lies, that our programme Panorama deliberately told lies about him, and we hope we can move on from this. No. They actually thought they were going to get away with that. Well, last night we broke the news that the president is indeed going to sue, or he has now sued the BBC, not for $1 billion as was initially threatened, not for $5 billion as the ante was upped, but for $10 billion. Now, there are so many aspects to this case that I find fascinating. One is the BBC's contention that somehow, as a broadcaster, as a journalistic outlet, that it doesn't have to adhere to the libel laws, the defamation laws, like every other journalistic outlet. We said sorry, what more does he want? Well, that isn't enough. You can't just say sorry and expect a libel to go away. But here's what you want to do if you've got your brains about you, if you've got your wits about you. You don't start apologising. You don't start admitting that you did it. Yeah, we did this. We're sorry. We're very sorry, Mr. President, that we did this. We're sorry that we deliberately doctored the tape to tell lies about you. Oh, you're suing us now. Well, we're going to defend this for all we're worth. Really, really stupid to admit libel when you pretty much know you're going to be going into a libel case. So you've admitted your guilt before the case even starts. Now the BBC seems to think it cannot fail in this lawsuit that's been filed in Florida. I've got bad news for the BBC. It will fail. I don't for a second think that Donald Trump will get $10 billion, but he's going to get something. They cannot possibly win this case. They have defamed him. They've admitted it, right?
It's, Kev, I mean, 21 years ago, I was doing what's called RTAs, road traffic accident cases, in the district, before district judges in the county court. And we used to think we'd won a case if the driver that hit somebody or was hit said sorry. So yes, I mean, admitting it in advance is incredibly stupid. But let's just analyse these narcissists, Kev. They're willing to throw wave after wave after wave of our money at this case. And that's what they're effectively going to do. It's not their own money that they're going to be spending. It's going to be our money that they're going to be spending. It comes in two main tranches. There's $5 billion for the defamation and also $5 billion in unfair trade practices. That's not been talked about far and by any way, to any extent enough, by English lawyers who are not qualified in Florida, who keep sort of popping up to say that he's definitely going to lose. He's paying properly qualified Florida lawyers who will, you know, their reputation's on the line. Yeah. So we owe them at least a degree of professional courtesy, even if we can't just assume they're definitely going to win. It also, Kev, I think encapsulates this modern idea that morality is somehow connected to law, and so that if he wins, what the BBC did will be morally wrong. And I don't think morality is connected to law. The BBC has acted with absolute moral degeneracy, with the complete opposite of journalistic ethics. Mm-hmm. It has shamed itself utterly. I mean, I can think of no other way that the BBC could more humiliate itself. Mm-hmm. You know, it has defamed and insulted, and it has spread lies about the President of the United States, which is our closest political ally, who we have been allied with for as long as it matters. You know, my granny wouldn't have a word said against an American after they came to our aid during the Second World War. And to be honest, as a child, I always thought that was a bit eccentric. But having seen how much they defend us now, I won't have a word said against an American. And I won't have a word said against Mr. Trump. What was the BBC thinking that it was doing? What on earth does it think it's doing? And if it's going to fight this case with our money and try and get off on some technicality, and then turn around and say, see, we were morally good. No, you weren't. At no point have you been morally good. Even if Mr. Trump loses, and I accept that he's taken professional advice and he's actually a very seasoned litigator.
Yeah, it's true. He's experienced at this sort of thing, yes.
Well, exactly. I mean, the BBC came out within 24 hours to say that they were innocent and he was definitely going to lose the case. And it's like, I just don't think the practicalities of contacting a lawyer in Florida that you didn't have before, I just don't believe that you actually took legal advice before you said that. This is just our narcissistic age, in which these delusional narcissists who run all of our institutions, who have appointed each other to these cushy non-jobs, are more than willing to waste our money being corporatist and defensive, even though we all know they've done wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, they have done wrong. They cannot.
They've admitted it, which is a stupid thing to do when you know a legal case is hurtling down the track at you. These people are naive. They're born yesterday, and they're going to be playing with the big boys when they go over to America.
I think that's too kind. I think they are absolutely delusional narcissists who believe that because they've believed the mantras and recite all the beliefs that we all know that everybody who lives in a big house in Islington has, that they are therefore morally virtuous, superior to the rest of us. We're inferior, Kev. You and I are both.
Oh yeah, no, we're not on their Christmas card list. I'll tell you that.
Well, Lord protect our listeners and viewers from these people and their views of them. But this is just unbelievable that they would behave this way.
Also, Stephen, I was looking forward to talking to you because there are quite a few of these sort of media enthusiasts among your profession, these lawyers who crop up time and time again every time there's one of these cases. I never want them on. I want you on because you're an independent thinker. They're not. And they start sort of quoting precedent of a case in 1953 that happened in Oxford Crown Court. Well, that isn't really going to do you much use in Florida, mate, I'll tell you that. But I have heard today several of these lawyers, all of whom seem to think, oh, that's the BBC, they can't possibly lose against this oik, President Trump. I've heard one of them actually said, well, the BBC's defence will be that although they did edit this tape, that essentially they edited it to relay the true message of what his speech was. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. So in other words, these lefties, these lefty lawyers, lefties in the BBC, they believe that although this tape was doctored, it still delivered the essential message that they think Trump was actually saying, which was, hey, you lot with your buffalo hats and your Stars and Stripes flags, you march on Capitol Hill. Let's have a revolution. That's what they are actually maintaining that essentially Trump said, which he said absolutely the opposite. He said, don't do it peacefully if you must. That was all he said. So that's a nonsense. And another nonsensical line of argument that I've heard from members of your profession today, these ones who like going on to Sky News and things like that, and the BBC indeed, said, well, this is a freedom of expression issue. This is a freedom of speech issue. The BBC has got a right to... You can't stop the BBC from saying... Wait a second. You know me, and I think you're the same. I'm pretty much an absolutist about freedom of speech to what some people would say is an almost lunatic extent. I believe people should be able to say whatever the hell they like without fear of the law coming for them. But maybe I go a little bit too far on that. So I probably do sometimes. However... here's where I draw the line about freedom of speech. You cannot be allowed to lie about someone in public. That's what the BBC have done. They have lied about President Trump. These are direct lies which definitely affect his reputation. There's no doubt about it. If he loses this case, he is the man who officially said, let's have a revolution, get up there and set fire to the Capitol Hill. He didn't do that. So they're saying that they ought to be allowed to tell lies about the President of the United States of America. Well, I've got bad news for them. They are not allowed to do that. This is not a freedom of speech issue. This is a journalism issue. Did you get your story right, or did you get your story wrong? The BBC has admitted they got their story wrong. It's not a freedom of speech issue. It is a truth issue. And if you lied about someone, you lose the libel case, right?
Yeah. And with friends like this, the BBC doesn't need enemies. This is just an absurd argument to have. The BBC should not be lying, and people should not be defending the right of the BBC to lie. It is not freedom of speech to spread malicious rumours about people. That's clearly what they did to President Trump. It's not freedom of speech to damage this country diplomatically, which is what the BBC has done. Do you know their motto is the BBC shall speak peace, nation shall speak peace unto nation? It's like you literally try to incentivize violence against the President of the United States. Yeah. This is absolutely disgraceful. But these are just unaccountable narcissists. And what we've seen, Kev, structurally in our country, behind the word independent has lurked the word unaccountable. And every time we found unaccountable institutions like the BBC, like Ofcom, like every other, like numerous police constables, chief constables right now, that behind independent lurks unaccountable. Behind unaccountable, we find narcissists who just do whatever the hell they like without any fear of consequence. And President Trump is right to many extent. I mean, he's doing this for us. I mean, I suspect he's a rather charming man. So I suspect he's very cunning. So I expect he'll do something like beat them, get the money, and then give it back to the people. Yeah. Because he's very.
Well, he's making it. This isn't a financial thing. He's making a very serious point. I've also heard people from the BBC, apparatchiks, BBC lifers, these people who work there and become kind of Stockholm syndrome, completely indoctrinated. So actually say, I actually heard a former BBC executive say, this was a couple of weeks ago, well, the BBC has apologised. What more does President Trump want? $10 billion, if you want to know.
But it's not just that, Kev. He wants them to not lie again. And to put in place systems so that they don't lie in future. To actually not just say, oh, I'm terribly sorry I got caught, but actually to fix the problem. And that, because always in these libel cases, Kev, you can fix this. You know, we end up with all sorts of statements. You know, the victim might demand that the newspaper puts the story on the front page or page 3, but we come to a negotiated settlement whereby the victim is happy that the perpetrator has genuinely taken on board what they have done. And instead, the BBC has not genuinely taken on board what it has done. It is trying to play victim whilst being the perpetrator.
Exactly right. And also, you know, the BBC maintains, or some people in the BBC maintain, well, it's Donald Trump. He hasn't really got any reputation to lose. He is the President of the United States of America, and you are saying that he called for a revolution in the United States of America. Let me tell you, folks, at the BBC, that is called reputational damage. Get your checkbook out. Before we move on, Stephen, let's just play old Donald confirming last night that he will sue the Beeb.
In a little while, you'll be seeing I'm suing the BBC for putting words in my mouth, literally. They put words in my mouth. They had me saying things that I never said coming out. I guess they used AI or something. So we'll be bringing that lawsuit. A lot of people are asking, when are you bringing that lawsuit? Even the media can't believe that one. They actually put terrible words in my mouth having to do with January 6th that I didn't say. And the beautiful words that I said, right? The beautiful words, talking about patriotism and all of the good things that I said, they didn't say that, but they put terrible words. They actually have me speaking with words that I never said, and they got caught because I believe somebody at BBC said, this is so bad, it has to be reported. That's called fake news. So we'll be filing that suit probably this afternoon or tomorrow morning.
Well, they've got that suit now, Stephen, and my message to you guys, you people at the BBC, is be afraid. Be very afraid. Let's go to break now, Stephen, and when we come back, we'll talk about a disgraceful attempt to ban Monday night's vigil by the Jewish community here to pay tribute to their fallen Jewish friends and colleagues in Australia. All they wanted to do was to gather to pay tribute to the 16 people massacred in the Bondi Beach horror, and Sadiq Khan's London officials tried to ban it for security reasons. Extraordinary. Let's talk about Ukraine, shall we, as I was saying earlier. Basically, just earlier this week, the UK committed £600 million in air defence capabilities. This included cutting-edge turrets that can shoot down Russian drones to support Ukraine through the winter. Over 1,000 UK-built air defence missiles were delivered, have been delivered since June. And on we go. Today, Roman Abramovich is being pressurised by Keir Starmer to hand over £2.5 billion from his sale of Chelsea Football Club, which of course he used to own. And what does Keir Starmer want to do with that money? He wants to hand it straight to Ukraine. As I say, I'm shallow and ignorant and stupid, and I don't really understand geopolitics and international pressures and all that. Maybe. Well, I kind of do. I do understand, that if we let Putin run rampant, run riot, the world would be in danger. But this has been some years now, and the amount of money the West, countries like Britain, are sending to Ukraine, I think it's becoming a matter for concern. And also, what really annoys me is that Starmer, people like that, the body politic, the Westminster bubble boys and girls, they don't seem to feel this is even an issue for debate. They assume that we're all going, oh, yeah, keep the money, go, here's my tax money, send it straight to Kiev. Maybe I could cut out the middleman and sort of write Zelensky a cheque. I'm just getting slightly uncomfortable about it. Do you think I'm alone?
Right, let's talk a bit of geopolitics for a moment. Within our lifetime, Argentina marched into the Falklands, sovereign British territory. We went in there and repelled them and spanked them, rightfully so, with a little help from our friends. Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard marched into Kuwait, again, an illegal invasion of a sovereign state. It was the first Gulf War. Us and America put together a coalition, repelled them from Kuwait and spanked the Republican Guard as it retreated back to Baghdad. You cannot go marching your troops illegally into other sovereign states.
Yep.
But the big difference when Russia marched into Ukraine is that we've got weak, pathetic politicians throughout Europe. What should have happened on day one when Putin marched into Ukraine is we should have put a blank piece of paper in front of Zelensky and said, sign there, right, you're in NATO now, and then we put a coalition and we should have spanked Putin's troops all the way back to Moscow. But weak, pathetic politicians didn't do it because Putin's got nukes and they're scared of him.
Yeah.
That's the problem. If that would have happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation because it would have been done and dusted. But you got weak politicians here at the time, Johnson, weak and pathetic politicians in America at the time, Sleepy Joe Biden, and that other bunch of European clowns, okay, who would not stand up to him. So that's why we are at where we're at. You have Starmer with his pathetic expression, the coalition of the willing, right?
Yeah.
They might be willing, but are they able? That's the question I ask. You need to be both. And he goes on, and this is why we have these stories repeatedly cropping up now. Abramovich, is he going to give the $2.5 billion back? He's already sanctioned by the UK.
Yeah.
So is Putin's mate? Is he going to give $2.5 billion back to the UK that he knows the UK then want to funnel through to Zelensky?
Yeah.
Is Abramovich going to do that? These politicians are so weak and they're so pathetic and they won't stand up to aggression. Sometimes the only thing that violent people understand is violence.
I agree with you, and apart from Zelensky, our government is busy seizing, Soviet assets all over the country, oligarchs' wealth and all that. Now, so they're taking other people's money on the principle that it's immoral money, and therefore we're taking it off you, and they're sending it to Ukraine. Well, I'm told by my legal friends that this is extremely dodgy. This amounts to kind of official theft, and that coming down the pipeline, there could be a mass of very serious legal actions against this government. But, as I say, I totally understand it. My position is difficult, I suppose. I understand why we have to stop Putin. I understand we have to help Ukraine as much as possible. But I sense, talking to people around the country, that they're a bit sick of this knee-jerk handing over to virtually every penny we've got to Kiev, to the Ukraine. And people are going, well, what about us? People are hurting at the moment.
I completely get that people would be weary of us forever shoveling huge amounts of money in Ukraine's direction. But none of this would need to have happened if we'd had strong politicians that had stood up to Putin in the first place. He wasn't going to nuke us. Putin knows that we've got enough of a nuclear arsenal between us and the Americans to wipe all of humanity off the face of the earth forever. He would not have done that. But, of course, he called the bluff of the weak and pathetic politicians, and they fell for it. And that's why this is such a mess, which is why it's costing us so much money. And I'm not a gambling man, but if I was, I would bet that Abramovich does not hand over 1 penny of that $2.5 billion that our government's saying, give it to us, Mr. Abramovich, give it to us.
Oh,
yeah,
go on, Roman.
Yeah, right.
Go on, Roman. I think that what they were hoping they could seize this money, but I think he's squirreled it away and they can't seize it. So they're reduced to just urging him to hand that money over. I don't think he'll do that in a month of Sundays. But I do think it's kind of weird that if you know, they do get their hands on this £2.5 billion, they're just going to immediately transfer it to Kiev. And if we had, let me ask you this, folks, as well. Let's get Peter's reaction too. If we had a referendum on this tomorrow among the people of Britain, you know, should we carry on spending billions and billions of pounds on Ukraine, sending more and more money, 600 million earlier this week, of taxpayers' money to Ukraine? What do you think the result of that referendum would be?
I'm terrified if it ended up 52% to 48%.
Don't do that again.
I'm haunted by referendums.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure that they're the best thing we could possibly hold. Yeah. It would be very interesting to see, and I perfectly get the standpoint of people who are weary of it, whose patience is wearing a little bit thin. But the thing is, politicians, world leaders, should not be allowed to march into the sovereign states of others as they feel fit. You know, we've got to have international law.
And let me tell you, the Coalition of the Willing, which includes those well-known bellicose countries, France and Germany, and other, shall we say, not militarily inclined European countries. Yeah. At the moment, the point where Trump and Vance pull America out, and which they will pretty damn soon, and it's all left to the Europeans. You know, we'll have to put boots on the ground, maybe even. Let me tell you, Pete, within a very short space of time, the European coalition of the willing will become the coalition of the unwilling. The idea that Germany, France, Britain, and all the rest of the European countries will hold a united front and put in loads of their soldiers and their money and their effort together without America, I think is a bit of a stretch.
For the birds. Yeah. Completely for the birds. Yeah. We are most definitely beholden and indebted to the military and economic might of our great ally, the United States of America. A wonderful place, as its problems, which country doesn't? But in terms of having a very important ally, America is it. NATO, without America, would get blown over by the wind, let alone Putin's forces.
And that's the problem. This coalition of the willing, this is being formed hastily because Trump, quite rightly, said, listen, you know, you've just, for the past, you know, since the 1960s, you've been relying on America. In fact, since the Second World War, we've been footing the bill for the defence of Europe. We're not going to do it anymore. And all of the European nations are sort of reeling in shock. Oh my God, do you mean we've got to defend ourselves? Oh my God, do you mean we have to help Ukraine on our own? That's only going to cost us even more, folks. We're going to talk about the BBC TV licence, Labour planning to give them free to anyone on benefits. That's good, isn't it? So that means if you're not on benefits, trust me, your BBC TV licence, the price of it will go up to fund the free licences for people who don't work. But before we get to that, Pete, still with the BBC, welcome to Planet BBC, everyone. A woman, they did a series in 2016 called, it's a BBC series called Black and British, A Forgotten History. This was based on the discovery of a Roman skeleton of a woman found at Beachy Head down there in Sussex, the highest cliffs in Britain, I think. She was from sub-Saharan Africa. And yes, Black and British, A Forgotten History. Very interesting, fascinating. The thing is, Pete, it now transpires that the BBC's first Black Briton was actually white. She wasn't black.
Well, Professor David Olusoga, who presented this documentary
it would be him, wouldn't it? Yeah.
For the BBC, is much revered, you know, by
not
those,
in my house,
by those of a left-leaning disposition. And everything he says is taken as absolute gospel. And of course, he's often banging on about reparations for slavery and such like. He can often be found beating those kind of drums, yes. And there he is, a professor no less, putting his reputation at stake in 2016 when he says, this is Britain's first black person. Well, actually, This
earliest Black Britain.
Yes, this skull was had been stored in a box, okay, in Eastbourne, but of course technology has advanced since Professor Olusoga's claims, and DNA profiling has actually shown her to be white, of blonde hair and light-coloured eyes, so not remotely black.
Yeah, so it's a BBC series. You want that music out? Wah 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 wah. The BBC's first ever black British resident was a blonde white woman. As I say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Planet BBC. What do you think of that? I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's so BBC, so anxious to discover that sort of thing. Just thought I'd let you know that.
But they have a whole department called BBC Verify to ensure that everything goes out is the absolute truth. We verified it and we checked it. I mean, really.
The BBC, it's got like 63 people in it. Its bill is millions of pounds every year. They're always getting things wrong. You know, you can't have that BBC Verify, you know, we check the facts, So, yeah, BBC journalists saying, yeah, I've done this story and and I can guarantee 100% that this is true because I've checked it with BBC Verify. You know, I mean, that's like when you're in your policing days arresting a crook and him saying to you, no, I can guarantee you I didn't do this, you know, because I'm a crook and you can trust me. It's ridiculous. BBC Verify is an utter waste of money, and only a self-satisfied, pompous organisation like the BBC would appoint itself, almost anoint itself, the guardian of all truth. The trouble with the BBC Verify department is it's always getting things wrong. So take that with a pinch of salt. But you're right, Pete, they might have checked Britain's first black woman. BBC Verify. Imagine saying, "This BBC Verify. Can you check this out?" Yeah, we checked it out. The black. She's white. Oh dear, what a joke. Still with the BBC though, a more serious story. Outrage, Peter, as Labour plans free BBC TV licences for people on benefit streets, people on benefits and welfare. So in other words, that we'll have to fund. Those of us who work will have to fund free TV licences for those who don't work. This is just ludicrous. This is Labour. This is that their entire ethos is this, isn't it? It is bleed businesses and working people dry to hand it to the welfare state and the public sector.
I keep a close eye on my finances. Sarah, my amazing wife, kind of runs the family finances, but I'm always keeping an eye on my account, you know, to make sure that I'm not going to go overdrawn and that I've got enough money for however many weeks of the month it is left until I get
train journeys
get
to
paid.
see QPR lose.
You know that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know that kind of thing. And I was looking at it the other week and I thought, oh, that's all right. I've got a few quid until I know I'm going to get paid for some work, so that's fine. And the following day, I looked at it and went, oh, that's gone down quite dramatically. Let's have a look at my transactions. And what was it? My BBC licence that had gone out. Over 170 quid, because I do it as a one-off payment every year. Because it's cheaper than doing it in instalments. Right? I went, blimey, that's a lump of money, isn't it? If only I'd been on benefits now, under this plan, I wouldn't have lost that amount of money. I wouldn't have had to pay for that amount of money. And as you've quite rightly pointed out, who's going to foot the bill for this? It's going to be another huge payment on the welfare bill, which is already in excess of £110 billion a year, is running rampant as more and more people decide that they're going to live on benefits and not go to work. And who pays for all this stuff? We do. The grafters, your audience, everyone, Alarm Clock Britain. We pay for this.
Yeah, and this is Labour's approach to everything. That somehow or other they see it. You know, everyone on benefits, on welfare, huge amount of people, millions of people now. There's somehow or other really vulnerable people, underprivileged people that we all have to help. If it's stretching to you know, so here's a plan. You know, £174.50 at the moment. I believe it's about to go up to the best part of £180. The TV licence, that is. Here's an approach. You know, it's a lot of money for a lot of people. You can't afford your licence. Hi, boss. I'm resigning. I'm going to go on a dole. Why is that? Well, I want to get a free TV licence.
And I'm a bit anxious.
Yeah. Yeah, watching the BBC will make you anxious. Interestingly, though, the BBC won't like this. The BBC doesn't like giving away free TV licences, so whilst I don't remotely agree with this, it's all wrong. It's totally wrong. If it upsets the BBC, well, you know, at least there's something positive to take from it.
But where is this burgeoning welfare bill? Where, how and when is it ever going to be trimmed or otherwise reduced? Because this government can't bring in welfare reforms because their lunatic left backbenchers won't let them. Remember when Starmer tried to do that a few months ago, and all his backbenchers said, no, Prime Minister, you are not bringing in welfare reforms because we like people lying on their sofas all day long being shoveled loads of money from us, the workers. So where's the reform going to come from? Because the bill is unsustainable. This is what the politicians are not actually getting a grip of. We have to pay for the NHS, we have to pay for the schools, we have to pay for the army, we have to pay for the police, and I would say they are all greater priorities than this burgeoning welfare bill. And if they got a grip of it, the truly deserving, OK, those people with disabilities that can't work, who actually don't get enough money, the really properly true deserving, they do not get enough. They could be given more if we got the frigging, shall we say, some of those who choose not to work when they could work, if we got them into some form of employment or otherwise contributing to society.
Exactly. What do you think about this, folks? Should, or if you're a working alarm clock Brit, what do you think about the fact that you are going to have to fund free TV licences for people on benefits? So you're working, you have to pay a boosted amount in order for free TV licence to be given to people who aren't working, people on benefits, people on welfare. What do you think about that? 03444991000. While we're on the subject, Peter, what do you think about these various proposals? They're coming in from the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, about plans to kind of change the funding system of the BBC. I think anything that gets rid of the licence, the compulsory licence, I think is a good thing. But they're talking about potentially bringing in limited advertising. They're also talking about potentially putting key top programmes behind a paywall, so things like Line of Duty and Top Gear, you know, they have to pay to get that, or maybe even go into some kind of subscription model. I mean, when Labour are beginning to accept that this ludicrous mandatory by law, compulsory by law TV licence system is outmoded, is anachronistic. When Labour are considering that, because the Labour just loves the BBC, you know that the TV licences days are numbered.
I think there's an inherent fairness in that we pay for the BBC licence, and yet its material is enjoyed around the world by millions of people who get it for free. So how can that be the case? You see, if I have a subscription because I want to watch a football channel, that's fine, I pay for that, that's my choice.
Yep.
Likewise, if somebody in Spain or Australia or India or Ethiopia wants to buy a football package, they can do exactly the same. But with the BBC, for example, the World Service is listened to around the world by people who pay nothing for it in all those aforementioned countries, and yet we do. It doesn't make sense. If they want to break it up into packages, subscription packages, so you want a radio subscription, fine. So that I can listen to Test Match Special, for example, which I have to say is a brilliant commentary product. I would pay money to listen to that. I actually, when I'm watching the cricket on the telly, I have the radio commentary on because it is so much better.
So you think the paywall system might be a good idea?
Yeah, break it up into different packages, not one big blanket thing, because the BBC is so huge, from the World Service to Radio 1 Extra, which I've never listened to, and so much more. It's a vast, vast organisation. Do we need BBC 3 and BBC 4 on in the evenings? Do we need those channels? Do they need to be paid for? Let things stand on their own 2 feet.
Totally
Everybody else in the commercial world has to.
Absolutely.
Why not the BBC?
Yeah, make the BBC, or present to the BBC, the commercial imperative. It always improves the quality of productions, always improves television programmes, anything. Competition is good. If you've got to pay your own way, you're going to make sure that the programmes you make are popular, are good, and are going to bring in the dough. If you don't have the commercial imperative, which the BBC certainly doesn't at the moment, you get lazy. The BBC, you know, OK, it still makes some good stuff, and as you say, cricket commentary, it's got areas of excellence, but a lot of the stuff the BBC churns out now is just not very good, not high quality, because they're not in competition with anyone. Let's talk about Harry and Meghan. Now, this is a very interesting story that you alerted me to. You know, we're not going to be silly here and go, oh, divorce is in the air. It's not that. It's not that. But something has happened.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. They're getting divorced. Bye. No, seriously. Harry apparently has reason. He's got reason to be like this. He's got serious optimism that his long-running campaign to be given armed police protection, cops with guns, when he comes back to Britain, will soon be granted. The government here in Britain have launched a review into security arrangements for Harry and potentially his family when they come back to Britain. Now, if he gets those gun guards, if he gets police armed protection, he's making it clear that he wants to bring Archie and Lilibet, his kids, back to Britain to sort of reacquaint themselves with the grandfather that they've hardly ever met, King Charles. So that sounds like good news. The problem, though, is, and this is being reported in America by at least one magazine, is that Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, doesn't like Britain and has let it be known that she doesn't really ever want to come back here again. So apparently there's quite a lot of friction between Harry and Meghan about Harry's plans to get the kids back to Britain. She's not keen on it. And she thinks also that Harry's being a bit naive in thinking that if he takes the kids back to Britain to see King Charles, all will be forgiven. So they're apparently behind the gilded gates of the Montecito mansion shared by the gruesome twosome. There is some friction about this.
Yeah, it was described as bickering behind the scenes, bickering at home. And it's not just one, actually, publication that's reporting this here in the States. It's multiple publications that's reporting it in the United States. And look, we just saw Prince Harry alone in Aspen. You know, and we have a mutual friend that was on the field, Harry and I. I'm sure he would love to know exactly who that is so that he could cut them off. But I'm going to be careful in how I word this. But the mutual friend that was playing with him, that was playing with him on the polo field, has told me in the past that Meghan hates when he plays polo, that she's really been a Debbie Downer when it comes to his social life. And they were disappointed because all of a sudden when Harry started dating Meghan, they rarely saw Prince Harry. And here's an example. You know, Harry wants to go play in Aspen. Meghan stays at home with the kids. So we're seeing Harry alone around the holidays. We're seeing him on the slopes with his friends. It's my understanding that his his group of friends are thrilled when she's not around because she's allergic to fun, and she doesn't like the things that they get involved in. So, you know, that's another aspect of it. But yeah, what you're reporting is basically word for word what you said is basically word for word what we're reading here in the States, that Meghan has zero interest in setting foot in the UK again. To her, it's a lion's den, a source said. She thinks Prince Harry's absolutely naive to see it any other way. She really just does not see the value in being in the UK, although you and I know that she does see the value ultimately in hinting, flirting with the idea of returning to the UK, probably these headlines circulating, because she monetizes her connection to the British royal family. Otherwise, no one would be interested in her.
Yeah, that's another interesting aspect of it. Essentially, Meghan has always let it be known, I don't ever want to go back to that country, Britain. She seems to think we're a nation of racists. She seems to think half the royal family are racists. I don't know where she gets that idea from, that we're all slave drivers and we don't like her. That might be true. So she doesn't ever want to come back. But there are also reports that because she's so reluctant to do that, people might be dangling very big financial offers in front of her. In other words, she, at the same time she's saying, I don't ever want to go back to Britain, and I'm not sure it's a great idea, Harry, that you take our kids back there. I think you're being naive if you think all will be forgiven if you do that. That must be set aside the fact that apparently she's also letting it be known, well, I will go back to Britain if the price is right, if there's some kind of big financial offer on the table. To which I would say, Kinsey, by whom? What for? Who would want to give Meghan a load of money to come to Britain? I'm not quite sure what she's getting at there.
Well, I think that we saw an example of this the last time she was in Britain. You know, she only went back to receive an award. I imagine that the organizers of that event paid for her and Harry's flight out there. Remember, she asked Jill Biden and Joe Biden for a ride back, and they told her no that trip.
That's right.
So, you know, just a classic example of the Sussexes freeloading, which we've heard so much about in 2025. One of my favorite themes throughout 2025 is Harry and Meghan using other people's private jets and other people's homes. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know who would be willing to give her something like that, but I think her last visit is an example of that, because she has loathed the UK since she left, but she did return previously to accept an award. And I think that those organizers helped pay to get them out there privately. And then we know that they had to stay longer than they anticipated because of the death of Queen Elizabeth. And the Sussexes asked the Bidens if they could ride home on Air Force One.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? Let's talk about Meghan generally. I mean, she seems to be particularly frenetic at the moment. As we go into 2026, I think the question about Meghan is, what on earth is her life all about? What exactly is she doing? I mean, she seems to be doing a hell of a lot, and yet nothing much at all. She likes to look like she's looking busy, but then you think, well, actually, what exactly is she doing there? I made a list of some of the things that she's been, or that it looks like she's doing at the moment. I mean, she's sort of in a film. She's talking about producing a film. She's still taking pictures of the back of her kids' heads. She's starred in one of the most tedious shows in TV history, which you can still endure if you tune into Netflix right now. Perhaps the most extraordinary at all, she's apparently mulling over the idea of a potential deal with the tacky Kardashians. And so on and so forth. It's like, where is the direction here? Where is the direction here? Now, this film they've just bought the rights to a film.
Yeah, well, I thought of you. I thought of you when I read this headline because where is Meet Me at the Lake? Where's Meet Me at the Lake? A whole lot of announcing, very few executions. These two love a press release, don't they? Show us what you've got. Stop announcing things. Actually, Tina Brown, I can't remember how she'd put it years ago, but she'd said something about how they just are constantly announcing things, but they never follow through. And that really continues to define them into 2026.
Exactly right. And what do you make of... let me tell you about the film, by the way. So they bought the rights for quite a lot of money. I think it was about 3 years ago now, for Netflix, to develop the film of a best-selling novel called Meet Me at the Lake.
Actually, the rumor is that Netflix coughed up the dough to secure the rights. They were going to let Archwell put their name on it, though.
Yeah. Well, that was the story of romance rekindled by a chance encounter. They never made that movie, never even got into development, never got past first base. So that looks as if buying the rights to that was money straight down the gurgler, straight down the drain. They've now bought the rights, the gruesome twosome, Harry and Meghan, apparently, to a book called The Wedding Date. And the story is romance rekindled by a chance encounter. Do you see a picture building up here? Why didn't they make the original film of the book they bought about romance rekindled by a chance encounter, instead of moving on to buying the rights to another book about the same topic? What is it? What are they up to?
What is the rekindled? Because everybody's saying that all of these books in some way reflect their own love story, which I'm sure that they're behind that narrative. But what's the first chance encounter? Is it Meghan sitting outside of Buckingham Palace when she's 15, pretending she's never Googled the British royal family?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Why don't you guys get your butts in gear and actually do something? Because another Carly Fortune book was purchased by Amazon, and I'm already seeing trailers for it, Kev. And it since Harry and Meghan bought Meet Me at the Lake, she optioned another book to Amazon, and they're already promoting it. It's been cast, some of it's been shot, and it's already being promoted on social media. So Harry and Meghan move at a snail's pace, or they're all talk and nothing actually gets done.
Yeah, and the wedding date purchase of the rights. So we're told that Netflix are in the frame again. I mean, I'm not sure what.
Oh, I have goss on that. It's my understanding.
Hit me with it.
It's my understanding that they are dangling the carrot of a Diana documentary, in front of Netflix to keep Netflix on board.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I get that. And also Netflix, as we've discussed many times, they want to be hanging around just in case Meghan's ever available to tell the story of the divorce between her and Harry, should that unfortunate event unfold, of course. That's why I guess Netflix stays friendly with these two. We talked just now about her holiday special of With Love, Meghan. That's got to be the last of those awful programs, hasn't it?
Well, I just was talking about the cancellation of Boots, which was analytically was an incredibly successful show for Netflix. Yes, the Pentagon called it woke garbage. It's about a young gay man from Louisiana joining the military. But analytically, it was like it was in the top 10. It was in number 7 for Netflix's, original content all year long. Now, Meghan's content does not fall into the top 10 at all. So if they continue to create that program, I think people are going to pull their hair out, because there's no rhyme or reason for it to continue when Netflix is canceling legitimately successful programs. Why would you continue with Meghan Markle's program? It's critically slammed. It does not have an audience, and it has no personality at all.
Exactly right. And the holiday special, high hopes around that, didn't even make the top 10 in Netflix's charts. So an official flop, but they still seem to be nurturing some kind of relationship with Meghan and Harry. God knows why. But, we do know why, as you just said. Maybe a Diana documentary. That would be fairly compelling, and even more compelling, Meghan, My Divorce. That would be a bestseller, or that would pack them out on TV, definitely. Now, the backdrop to all this activity that we're talking about, you know, press releases here, press releases there, we bought the rights to this, we're going to do that. The backdrop to this is, that I think she's trying to overshadow, is the still catastrophic publicity disaster of her approach to her father, Thomas Markle's life or death drama over in the Philippines. The guy, he's 81 years old. Since she stopped talking to him more than 7 years ago, he's had 2 strokes, a heart attack, survived a earthquake, and a couple of weeks ago we learned he'd had emergency blood clot surgery, which then required the amputation of his leg. Well, we essentially know the story, that first of all she said she tried to send an email, didn't bounce back. She assumed it.
Desperately called around the hospital.
And then phoning around the hospitals. If you believe that, I've got some swampland to sell you in Florida. Absolutely unbelievable. But the upshot of this story, which is extraordinary, that her contact with her father in his hour of need, when he's in distress, potentially about to die, doctors said that he might not make it. The upshot of this is that Meghan's contact with him was to essentially send him a legal letter.
Multiple.
What amounted
he had to sign multiple legal letters to get a hold of a breakup letter.
Yeah, and what she said to him in this letter, this reconciliation allegedly, was, I can't talk to you because you talk to the press. I mean, that was it. Dad's.
And we only know that because someone from Meghan's team told the press.
Yeah, I mean, but doesn't she? I think she's so terrible at publicity, at PR, that I don't think she realises quite what a dark cloud that has cast on her image forevermore. People aren't going to forget this. I mean, Thomas Markle, Senior, 81 years old, he's still languishing in a Philippines hospital, and we're all saying, well, couldn't you pick up the damn phone? He hasn't changed his phone number since she was talking to him, so she could ring him. I mean, come on.
I think that she looks incredibly selfish in this scenario, and if you and I looked at a timeline, we can state factually that Thomas Markle Sr., aside from doing interviews about himself, because he did do an interview when he was in a Philippines earthquake to say, I'm here, I survived. People were worried about him. He's very high up in his apartment complex in the Philippines. I think if we looked at a timeline, we could confidently say that Thomas Markle hasn't done any media surrounding his daughter in years. What's it going to take? You know, and then if people are going to go, well, what about the interview he gave from his hospital bed? I'm sorry, but that's a man afraid that he's about to die.
Exactly.
Reaching out to his daughter.
Yeah,
desperately reaching out.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
I don't care what he's doing, what alleged crime he's supposed to have committed in Meghan's mind. Your dad.
But I'm just saying,
your dad could be dying. Pick up the damn phone.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I'm just saying, how long does it take to? How much proof does she need? Because for years, he did not speak about her. He hasn't really spoken about her since, I think it was a Channel 5 documentary. But for years, he hasn't spoken about her. So how many years does it take before she goes, oh, okay, he's not going to talk to the media anymore. I can forgive him now, or it's a safe space to go. But she's saying, I'm never going to forgive you. Yeah. I never want to reconcile with you. And then basically, in my opinion, lying to the media, saying, oh, no, I reached out. It's fine. You guys can stop talking about this now. You were reaching out to him to tell him, I don't want to talk to you.
Exactly right. I mean, that's what she did. Well, her father's at death's door after serious surgery, blood clot and leg amputation. Her attempt, or her alleged reconciliation attempt, or the reaching out to him, was to send him a letter saying, oh, just to let you know, I will never talk to you again. That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
But you know what? I throw it back to around this time last year, January 1st, 2025. Meghan takes to Instagram hours after Tiggy Tiggy Legg-Burke's stepson dies in a terror attack in New Orleans to announce that she's back on Instagram. She is wholly self-consumed. This is Archie's godmother, by the way, Tiggy. She is wholly self-consumed, completely selfish, and other people's problems, they're not her problem. She has an agenda, and that's to sell herself. So she's not worried about her dad, just the same way she wasn't worried about poor Tiggy, who'd lost a stepson the day she decided it was more important to return to Instagram.
Yeah, and we're told poor old Thomas Markle is absolutely devastated and shattered by this, that his daughter's response to his health crisis was to send him a virtual legal letter warning him she'll never talk to him again. Really nice. Before you go, Kins, let's talk about old Ginger Nuts, old Harry, a little bit, shall we? Because among this sort of whirlwind of frantic whirlwind of activity by Meghan and I guess Harry being carried along for the ride is this proposal, this suggestion that the two of them might get more and more involved with the Kardashians, partly to help Meghan's useless online store as ever, which I don't think will be here this time next Christmas, if not this time next week, the way it's going. But they want to get link up with the Kardashians because the Kardashians are very good at marketing. And this could, we're told, involve Harry getting involved, considering an unlikely partnership with Kim Kardashian to help flog her underwear brand Skims. So do you think he's going to stand there like in commercials with just her underwear on?
There's not enough therapy in the world. Yeah. After I witnessed something like that, I would be so... I would need therapy. I don't need to see Harry in underwear. Yeah. Harry he has Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's body these days. Like, go look at him on the polo horse. I'm worried about the polo horse. Yeah. But yeah, I don't need to see that guy in underwear. I don't care how much of a fox Meghan Markle thinks he is. But you're right, that is being reported. And when I talked to you about this, I was like, and the most shocking part of this, yes, we can see Meghan teaming up with the Kardashians. I've been saying it for years. There's pictures of Kris with Doria. There's pictures of Meghan with Kim. Yes, that collaboration could absolutely happen. And Kim is the smarter of the two. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, she
made millions of dollars from her digital game, underwear, you name it. Well, we won't talk about the you-know-what tape, although you guys have talked about nudity.
Family show, Kenzie, family show.
Yeah.
Kris Jenner, though, just before you, Kris Jenner is apparently very keen in return for them helping Meghan's brand to write Harry and Meghan into an episode of the Kardashians. If Harry ends up in a trashy reality TV show, that will be a sad end to his American dream, won't it? Is that why he came to the States, to end up in the Kardashians?
Look, the Kardashians are ruthless, okay? I'm telling you right now, whether Harry and Meghan want to be written into an episode of the Kardashians, they're already in an episode of the Kardashians, because the Kardashians will take advantage of all the media surrounding those pictures being removed on Instagram at Kris Jenner's birthday party. Yeah. That will be an entire episode of the Kardashians. You're right. The girls talking about it behind the scenes. And we'll actually get the real story when it airs on Hulu for the first time.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I don't often watch the Kardashians, but I'll watch that episode.
I was going to tell you that we were going to go to some calls on misogyny, but we're going to be going live to the farm. We're going to hear the sound of cows being milked by a farmer who's on his farm right now in southwest England, a cow and sheep farmer in Exmoor. James, hello, it's James Wright. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Do you know, I've seen cows being milked with an industrial thing that you stick on the udders, and it's beautiful, like a very big, I mean, you know all this, I'm just explaining it for other people, but your milk fills it, and it's obviously not pasteurised, and I'm told that if it's raw milk, it's extremely healthy. Am I right, James?
Well, look, pasteurisation exists to kill all the bugs in the milk. But what I'll tell you is unpasteurised milk is about the best thing you'll ever you'll ever taste. But I'm a beef farmer, so the cows behind me, their calves are the ones drinking the milk. So I'm just making sure the mums have got lots of food. They can produce lots of milk for their calves.
Can we see the cows? Can you bring
if I move out the way,
your outside broadcast unit?
If I move out the way, you'll be able to see the cows. So
That's great.
We're in a barn on Exmoor. They're just having their evening dinner. Loads of silage, and it's been very wet today. So now we've got a bit of a dry movement. So I've come out to push up their silage.
Are they talking? Can we hear them go? Can we hear them?
They're pretty quiet. Once they've got some food in front of them, as you can see, they've got their heads down. So I've got about 70 cows in this shed. And once they got the food, they go a bit quiet. But about 15 minutes ago, there was a bit of a cacophony. So
how lovely. Well, if they do pipe up for a sing-song, you know, shut me up, and we'll see if we can get them live on. Do you name them, by the way?
No, the only one that's got a name on this farm is Wilfred. So Wilfred's our bull. He weighs about 1,000 kilos, and he's the only one with a name.
I'd be tempted to call some of the cows Ermintrude.
Right.
Out of Dougal. Because that was the cow, the one with the daisy in its mouth. Do you remember? You're a bit young, actually.
I know. I was born in 1992, so unfortunately you're aging me. Yeah,
oh, my God, 1992. That was yesterday. Anyway, so look, the reason why, apart from anything, thank you for coming on the show and showing us your beautiful farm in Exmoor, and you are a farmer of some scale. And that is that farmers are left fearing a really bleak future. We keep on hearing this about the taxation problems that inheritance is facing in the farming industry, and about how supermarkets don't allow farmers to make money out of their milk because the margins are so tight, and you wonder why you're making a living for like a penny a pint or even less perhaps. But then there's this review by Baroness Batters, who's a former head of the National Farmers Union, who's called for a whole new deal for this industry hit by rising costs and loss of subsidies, rising wage bills, inheritance tax reforms, which obviously the farmers are going into Westminster with their combine harvesters, and some of them with cows as well, go through supermarkets as well. I like that as a protest, one of my favourites. And a halt to multi-million-pound subsidy schemes. They've left farmers questioning the future of their businesses, a report for the government has found. And if you start attacking the farming industry, I mean, that is a genuine national security issue, isn't it?
Well, food security is national security, and a nation that can't feed itself is no nation at all. And farming it's at the moment it's at a very critical point. We've been, for the last 60 years, we've given billions of pounds for farmers for not doing a lot, right? We've got money for basically looking after the countryside and keeping it looking the same. And when we left the EU, we replaced that with paying farmers to basically look after the environment. That's a good thing, right? Paying farmers for doing something that benefits us all. But Labour have stopped that. So since September, you haven't been able to apply for that. Sorry, so since the spring, you haven't been able to apply for that. So what farmers want is, we want a little bit of certainty. We like producing food for the country, and we want to know that next year we'll be able to do that. But the rules keep on changing. The money that farmers were being paid for the environment has disappeared. So this review is welcome, but the elephant in the room is the family farm tax, 20% of a farm's value. And if there's a profitability problem now, what are we going to do when every generation we've got to pay 20% to the government? I really don't know.
And we all know that elephants are genetic cousins of cows. That's why you said that. Baroness Batters has stopped short of calling for an inheritance tax reversal from Sir Keir Starmer's government, but she does say that a new deal for more profitable farming is needed to recognise the true cost of producing food and, of course, protecting the environment. She's got 57 recommendations, including what she calls quick wins, obviously common sense things, such as making it easier for farmers to build reservoirs on their land and improve access to finance. Workforce shortages were the single biggest blocker to profitability for horticulture in the longer term, she says. Wage costs are up, as are rises in national insurance contributions. Obviously, this very thin line between taxation and profitability really affects critical industries like farms. Even machinery is up 31%. James, I mean, you guys are one of the biggest victims of this, you know, increase in taxation because your profitability is so tight, isn't it? Your margins are so low.
Oh, yeah, I mean, wheat. I mean, I'm a beef farmer. The beef price is pretty good at the moment. But
right.
For wheat, it's the same that it was 20 years ago.
Really?
So you can imagine all the regulations, all the costs that increased in the last 20 years. Yeah, huge. And and energy is so much of what goes into our food. So when the oil price rises, when the electricity price rises, that is impacts on our profitability, but also what you pay in the shops as well. And farmers want food, we produce food, and we want that to be readily available to the public. So what we need is that regulation to come off, that tax burden to come off, some support around the energy so that we can, you know, do what we love, which is turning grass into milk, which the calf drink, which turns into beef. That's what we want to do, right? And the arable farmers want to turn the seed they plant into the ground, into wheat, which goes into the bread, and the barley that goes into our beer. That's what we want to do. We want to be left alone to do those things.
You just mentioned beer, so now I'm completely switched on, as are all our audience as well. Now, also, some of her additional recommendations, and this is related to food security, the purchase of more British food by hospitals, by the public sector, by schools and other caterers in the public sector. The government argues they're crucial to shoring up the public finances. The idea of, you know, buying a cauliflower from New Zealand is it seems immoral. It just seems crazy.
Absolutely. And, you know, British food is some of the best in the world.
Yeah.
And when people are sick in hospitals, when we've got children growing up, we want to maximise their nutrition. Why would we not buy British? And the answer is because it's produced to such high standards, it is slightly more expensive. And the civil servants say they want to, you know, save those pennies. But actually what we should do is investing in the health of the nation and buying British food. I'll give you an example. Our ration packs that we give to the military still uses beef from Brazil.
No.
Why are we not buying great British beef? And,
is it
and
price discriminative? I mean, is Brazilian beef cheaper than British beef?
Yeah, simply is. It's cheaper. They use hormones. Hormones have been banned in British farming for decades, and just makes their animals more efficient. They can produce it cheaper than we can, and you know, so no resentment to the great Brazilian farmers, but you know, we want British beef.
We want British beef. And just a quick one on things like hormones. Does it affect blokes? Does it turn you into Larry Grayson?
Well, I look, I'm not an expert, but it's been banned in the UK for a long time, and we, you know,
what a gay day.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows who Larry Grayson was. All you got to do is look him up on the Generation Game. Oh, I love Larry. He made me laugh.